chess fans, welcome to Chess Beauty 82. At the end of Chess Beauty 81, we left you with this alarming position. This is from a humor tourney from 2004. The only one that I know of where the dedicated theme was humorous chess studies. And I believe we looked at one of these before. Anyway, this is another one, and I like this one a lot. I don't usually like positions this messy, but this one I think is worth it. So, have a go at it. See if you can find a way for white to win, because that's the stipulation. Okay, so I'm assuming you had a try. In this position, black's king is in a little bit of a tight spot, but black has an overwhelming material advantage, and white's queen, rook, bishop, and pawn are all hanging. Probably the most vexing threat for white in this position is queen takes rook, check, and white will not last long after that. So let's take a look at some failing tries to begin with. Most obvious one is probably bishop to e4 check, but it doesn't work. King takes h6, rook to h8 check, king to g5, queen to e7 check, bishop to f6, rook takes h5, getting a little desperate here, king takes h5, queen to e8, king to g4, queen to g6, knight to g5, exclam, queen to f5. And after king to g3, white has no sensible way to continue the attack, and black's material will tell. So back to the start position, let's look at another try. Bishop to d5 with the idea of counterattacking the black queen as well as safeguarding the rook. But it's not sufficient. Queen takes d5, rook takes h8. There's a little else here. Well, I suppose you could play, instead of rook takes h8 check, you could try rook takes g7 check, king takes h6, rook to h7 check, king to g6, and that's the end of the line for white's attack. There's no sensible checks that don't lose material. So going back, instead after bishop to d5, queen takes d5, rook h8 check, king to g6, exclam. Now he wouldn't want to take the rook on h8 because bishop takes g7 check, king to h7, bishop to d4, and that's actually winning for white. Going back after king to g6 then instead, and white has no sensible way to continue the attack. Another try. So from the starting position, how about rook to g7 check, king takes h6, rook to h7, king to g5, and again, white is out of ideas. One final try from the starting position. Bishop takes g7, but queen takes g8 check is hard to deal with. King to e7, e1 equals queen check, bishop to e4, and it doesn't really matter. White has no good moves here. Typically, a typical line would be queen takes e4 check, bishop to e5, queen takes e5 check, king to d7, queen to f7, king to c6, and queen e to d5 is checkmate. Those take care of all the obvious tries. There's really only one move left, and by process of elimination, we come upon rook to h8 check, exclamation point. Black could go to g6 here, as in similar variations we just looked at, but it's different now. King to g6, bishop to e4 check, king to f6 forced, and queen to e7 is checkmate. So after rook to h8 check, black has nothing better than to take the rook. And now, a very nice move from white, bishop to d5. And we're threatening the black queen as well as a checkmate on g7 after bishop takes pawn check. Well, let's take a look at a number of responses here. Could take the bishop, but then after queen to f7, queen takes d5, queen takes d5, bishop to g7 check, king to f7, knight to e5, queen takes e5, exclamation point, bishop takes e5, and a7 and mate will follow after the pawn queens. Another try after bishop to d5, bishop takes a7. That's insufficient. Bishop takes g7, king to h7, bishop to e4 is checkmate. Okay, back to the position after bishop to d5. One final try. Queen to b2, getting out of the line of fire, but queen to f7, and mate follows shortly. Okay, so after bishop to d5, black's only sensible way to continue is queen takes d5. And now we have bishop takes g7 check. Now if the bishop takes g7, then simply queen takes g7 is mate. After bishop takes g7 check, king to h7 is the only sensible move. And now, since white's queen is under attack from the bishop, the only move here is bishop takes d4 discovered check. Now, in this position is interesting because if white had another move, which of course would be illegal, queen to g7 would be checkmate. So what follows now is an amusing sequence where white marches the black king down the board only to march him right back up again to achieve the same position with white's queen being on move. So rather than trying to figure out what I just said, we'll just show you what happens here. King to g6. Well, he could go to h6. After bishop takes d4 discovered check, he could go to h6, but then simply queen to g7 is checkmate. So after bishop takes d4 discovered check, king to g6 is forced. And now the sequence begins. Queen g7 check, king f5, only move, queen f6, king e4. Well, let's see, he could play king to g4 here, but then queen to f4 is checkmate. So after queen to f6 check, he has to go king to e4, queen to f4, king to d3, queen to e3 check, king to c2. Okay, again, actually after queen to e3 check, he could go to c4, but queen to c3 is simply checkmate. So after queen to e3 check, he has to go to c2, queen to c3 check, king to d1, queen to a1 check, and now the king has to retrace his steps, king to c2, queen to b2. Instead of king to d3, he could go king to d1, but queen to b1 is checkmate. King to d3, he must go back, queen to c3 check, king to e4, queen to e3 check. Notice not only is the black king retracing his steps, but the white queen is also retracing her steps. King to f5, queen to f4 check, king to g6, queen to f6 check, king to h7, and here's that position, except it's now white to move. Well, it's essentially the same position. The white queen's in a slightly different place, but it's queen to g7 checkmate. Very nice. This is from a guy named Rossi, and it's from 2004. It won first commendation in the Humor Tournament. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. Our next position, which we'll examine in Chess Beauty 83, is the following. And this is white to play and win. So have a shot at it. It's a little easier than the one we just looked at, but it's very nice. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.